This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 666 at portlanddistro.com for 15% off on all purchases. Greetings, everyone. It's time for another episode of Everything Went Black. Before we get started, I just want to thank RF, our brand new patron on the Patreon list. Cheers, RF, and thanks for joining the squad. Every now and then, there's an episode that I really look forward to, and this is one of them. It's always a lot of fun talking to Eugene S. Robinson, and definitely great to have him back on the show. If you're not familiar with him, go back and listen to some of the older episodes we've done together. Eugene is currently the frontman of Oxbow, and he's also in a band I just found out that he's in called Bunuel, which is awesome. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Additionally, Eugene is a published author and journalist. You can find his work in Decibel, GQ, Grappling Magazine. His two books, A Long, Slow Screw, and The Fight Book, are highly recommended, especially The Fight Book, one of my favorite works about getting punched in the face and punching other people in the face. So here we go, Eugene Robinson. Eugene, great to hear from you, man.
Hey, it's great to be heard from. You know, I mean, it's weird. I'm sure you have this dichotomy as well, where, you know, the people that you know who train have all been pretty hale and healthy, but the people that you know from music have not been hanging in there, man. So I think I've got at last count, it was about 27 known associates who have succumbed in the past, 20 months. So yeah, it's good to be heard from.
You stayed healthy throughout all this too, right?
Yeah, well, I got something, man, but it wasn't COVID. I got some weird gastrointestinal thing, which nobody could figure out, which, I was doing okay until like January, and then it just really fucked me over. And then through a little bit of sleuthing and almost being murdered by the woman who claimed that she was a Rolling Stones doctor, I figured out that it was my ingestion of, I've been a pescatarian since 2007.
Right.
But it was my ingestion of Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger or these fake fucking things made in Redwood City, California, that was actually just destroying my insides. Which, if I'd read, it seems like that's one of the things it does. Of course, my wife's claim is that I just ate too much of it, but I could eat 10 pounds of red meat right now and it wouldn't have had that effect. So, to hell with Impossible Burgers, Beyond Burgers.
I've always been suspicious of those things, man. Like I saw them and I was like, I don't know, something doesn't add up with this trip here,
My native paranoia and distrust, I would have thought it kicked in there, but it was like the first, like I've gone the veggie burger route. It was the first thing that was like, man, this is actually almost like the real thing. And then it was like, it should have given me pause that was made in Redwood City by internet guys, but it just didn't, So, it was weird. I was eating it. Go, man, my guts are just rotten. Something's going on. I was just kept eating. I just couldn't figure out. I hadn't made the connection until months later, but it was horrifying. And I went from when, shut down with jiu-jitsu, I was probably about 230. And then I dropped down to like 186.
186 from 230. Yeah. Wow.
And then after I came back, it took me right now. I'm about I think I'm 227. So I'm back. I got the weight back, but it still took 14 months out of my life, with no training. I mean, because I was doing kettlebells and all that stuff in the driveway, keeping in pretty good shape, running, sprinting up hills. But in January, it all exploded in the ass, so to speak. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're feeling better, man. That's good.
Yep. Yeah.
So I listened to your show, and as a result of that, I'm kind of a Johnny-come-lately to Bunuel.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that you had this other outfit that you were working with. I've
Mm,
only am familiar with Oxbow and Whipping Boy, and Whipping Boy being the band from way back in the day that you played, you sang in, and
mm,
Oxbow, the more, even though there's a huge, rich history behind Oxbow, it's a current band, you know.
yep,
So the Bunuel stuff, I was like, oh, I gotta investigate this, and
yep.
so I'm new, so I need to know more about how you got involved with this new record, the controversy about the artwork and all that kind of stuff.
Well, the thing, it's weird, you tour and then you fall in love with different places over the course of time. Like, man, playing Japan was so great. I could see myself moving here in the future. And then you go back a few more times, you're like, yeah, fuck this. And then, you go through different places, and in the same way that you might fall in love with a place, places fall in love with you. Like, there was a time when, Germany and Oxbow were like, we were like cold on ice. We were together, and then the musicals. It's usually takes about 4 or 5 years to molt musical styles, and it just molted, and people are techno, but Italy and France have always been a weird place where I think both a sense of history and a sense of predestination, right? So the past and the future. And there was a guy there who had played with us, Pier Paolo Capavia, in a band called One Dimensional Man, opened for us in Rome, and I completely forgotten about it, right? And we play a show in Milan, and the audiences are pretty consistently the same number of people, and this guy just talking through the whole show, and I'm like, I'm gonna murder him, like murder him, right? But then he's like quiet at the right point, so I'm like, okay, well, maybe not murder him. So then the show ends, and he comes up to me. He comes up with some woman, and they like start talking to me, and he's like, listen, I've opened for you in Rome. I said, I don't remember. He goes, I'd like to email you about a few things. And I was like, sure, go ahead. And he sent me some One Dimensional Man stuff, which is really phenomenal. And he says, I'd like you to sing this song called This Hungry Beast. And there was a catch. I followed Lydia's example, started maybe about 20 years ago, which I don't really, she told me, and I go, hey, that's a good idea. I'm not an actor, right? So you don't give me a script. Like, I don't sing your lyrics, right? If you want me to sing, I'll write lyrics.
Right.
And he said, but no, I have a poet, and this guy's a published poet. And I was like, all right, I'll be an actor on this one, and I'll read this guy's lyrics. And the song just came out really well. And he said, hey, listen, I have an idea. I'd like to do something. He was very specific about what he wanted to do. And he referenced like Big Black, a lot of AMREP bands. And I wasn't entertained by the prospect, except I would always listen to that stuff. And I was a big fan of it. And there was a kind of knowing, sardonic kind of distance thing that was very much part of, say, an Albini vocal, right?
Right.
But then that became other people started doing it, and it was not nearly as interesting. So you had the same kind of musical attack, which I really loved, that kind of bass heavy thing happening, but everybody was doing Albini, and it worked for Albini, but I don't want to hear 10 Albinis. And I was like, if they only, and so finally somebody was presenting me with an opportunity where I could take that if they only and do the thing that I wish they would do, right? Which is like, take that kind of style of music, mid 90s, but then sing it with some sort of a basis in real feeling, and, answering the dictates of your soul, something real, right? And instead of this, distancing thing. And so I go, this is cool. It'll be fun to do. And that was the start of Bunuel. I think they wanted to name the band Los Olvidados. And I was like, yeah, no, we can't do that. I'm friends with the guy who was in Los Olvidados. So, it was a hardcore band from San Jose. We absolutely cannot do this. But why don't we just call it after the guy who directed it? Call it Bunuel. And they're like, perfect. So
I actually was going to ask about that, because Bunuel's Spanish, right? The filmmaker.
he's Spanish. Yeah, he's Spanish.
And these guys are Italians, right?
And they're Italians, yeah. But from The Exterminating Angel to Belle de Jour, the guy's done a lot of great movies. So, and of course was, set out initially to be, controversial with the whole eye slicing thing. So, it worked for me, because I also wanted to distinguish it from what was happening with Oxbow, right? Where, in very practical terms, in my mind, Oxbow is more like a documentary. Right. I mean, there's a one-to-one correlation. Since it started out as a suicide note for me anyway with Fuckfest, there was a one-to-one correlation between what's happening lyrically and what was happening with me, in reality, right? So, but with Bunuel, I go, this is more like a film, and with the same sort of latitude and the same sort of angle of attack, except, except, look, if you play, I always look at these things as conversations, right? And if you listen to music over time, you remember the music of your teens when it was made by teenagers. There was a lot of, I mean, if you remember the sticker on the Black Flag record said, from the executive at Unicorn said, this is, as a parent, I find this to be a very anti-parent record.
Yeah.
Right. So this was a conversation between, between people who had come of age and their parents. And I know from personal knowing these guys personally that, Rollins had a problem with his father. Ginn had, his parents were wonderful, but he initially had problems with his parents. And so, it makes sense. That's that conversation. That's the conversation you have when you're 20, maybe. But, the kind of, if you're maintaining this kind of angsty angle of attack, you're either working on shtick or you just haven't gotten your shit together, right? So, but there's something else that's happening inside me now that is not necessarily part of the Oxbow documentary. And at the same time that I'm getting better in terms of the older issues, they're new issues. And I got to tell you, man, that the kind of agita that I feel, as a result of moving into the latter portion of my fucking life is oceans deeper than what I'm feeling, than what I was feeling, as a 19-year-old.
Oh, dude, I can totally relate to that. I'm only a few years younger than you, man, and it's like I already can see like the Grim Reaper, I can hear the flutter of his cloak, in the wind, you know what I mean? And you start thinking about the finality and the finite nature of life,
Well, I mean, in this last year, I started to focus this shit in a really interesting way because nobody expected. If you were to tell me that I was going to lose 27 associates in the space of 20 months, I go, you're out of your mind. We all, if we came from a hardcore background, we've lost a fair number of people to drugs, to, people getting whatever, disease, getting hit. Kenny from Urban Waste got hit, was riding his fucking bicycle after years struggling with a heroin addiction, got his shit together, was riding his bike, boom, hit by a car, dead, right? So, but this last 20 months has been really weird, and it never dawned on me. Yeah, okay, I was dealing with the fact that I am mortal, that there's finitude, that I will end at some point. But I never really thought about people who I really know and like. They might die first.
Yeah.
I got to deal with that. What, again and again, like everybody you ever knew or liked, again and again. So, and then if you add kids into the equation, oh my God. So it's been, you could bring that kind of, I mean, like, Bunuel for me is like the id. I mean, and that should be really aggressively obvious, whereas, Oxbow is me presenting, I mean, the Oxbow song cycle ends with this next record, Love's Holiday. And, we've all talked about it, that lyrically, we just I'm interested in doing different things with Oxbow, and all of Oxbow sort of concurs. So, but the song cycle starts with Fuckfest, ends with Love's Holiday, where we go from there was anybody's guess. But with Bunuel, it was like, yeah, I still got this agita lurking. I mean, clearly I never would have had it unless it was part of the genetic equation, but now I got to do something with it. I can't make believe it doesn't exist. So that's the id. Oxbow's a super ego, and it totally made sense for me to do.
Well, just to add to something you said earlier about with both bands, with Bunuel and Oxbow, there's definitely a that feel of what is quote unquote noise rock, which is a term that I really, really despise actually. Mm-hmm. But for the journalists out there, that's the term they use to describe this type of music. However, it's not, both bands are not just bands doing the Jesus Lizard and Steve Albini, which is, I think, a lot of the practitioners of that style are guilty of that, and there's more levels. And like you were saying, Oxbow is a documentary and Bunuel is more of a narrative. And that's the sense I get. I mean, I've only listened to this recent record, Killers Like Us. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the other material. So is there it does have this kind of narrative quality to it. So is there a storyline behind this record or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean there is, and all of these records have been created and performed. A Resting Place for Strangers, An Easy Way Out, and now Killers Like Us have been performed over the last decade, or recorded, and over the last decade, my life has been in a really interesting place that you maybe got a slight inkling of if you read the New York Times or CNN
Yeah.
Business.
Well, actually, before we get into that, maybe just give like a little blurb about that, because I know just from listening, to your podcast what was going on, and you were very candid about these things once you were able to talk about them. So just give a little factoid for everyone who's maybe not familiar with that.
Well, I'll back into it, and I'll back into it by saying it all came to light when it was revealed that the chief operating officer of the company where I'd worked for almost a decade disguised himself as a YouTube executive in a $40 million financing call with Goldman Sachs. And that brought down the house of cards in October of 2021. And there are now SEC investigations, IRS investigations, because apparently there was a misappropriation of PPP funds. They weren't supposed to lay people off or reduce salaries, both of which they did, and now are trying to explain to the government what happened to the $7 million they took, which nobody can seem to find. So there's IRS, the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission for fraud, and then Department of Justice investigations that have been launched into the place where I spent like almost 10 years. That was headed by probably it's clearly hands down the worst boss I'd ever had, Carlos Watson, who was a former Goldman Sachs guy himself, McKinsey, Harvard, Stanford guy, who was also MSNBC news anchor for a period of time, and has won Emmys and so forth. So it's and it's like I said in the first piece I wrote about it for my Substack. Anybody who knows me, this was like, what it was like? It was like the scene in Quadrophenia where the guy peeps that the face is hauling people's bags as a bellboy. It was, at a certain degree, I realized it was necessary. I'm not a masochist by nature, but I think I had a lot to prove. Was it like, you're not gonna try as you might, you will not best be in this regard. And indeed it seems to be that I've outlasted him. So but it was at a great cost. But I've also was going through a divorce, and I got remarried, and then the woman I married had immigration problems. So I was not in a position to make, as an elderly gentleman, make a lot of professional moves that were fast. So I was locked into this death spiral with this guy. Fortunately, they fired me in June, and then their whole world exploded September, October. So, and now of course, NBC Universal with the New York Times is making a documentary, of which they've got me involved. And Matt Bai, who used to be at the New York Times, has made a couple of feature films. It's going to make a feature film, which apparently the working title is the same title I used for my Substack, which makes me very happy, which was Ozzy Rules, the House Negro always gets it in the end. So it's bored quite a lot of fruit for me. And apparently, I guess I'm supposed to be on TMZ tomorrow. I don't know what. They won't tell me about what, which is kind of ominous. It feels like a trap, but I'm glad to walk into it.
That would be kind of nerve-wracking, I think, to be like, yeah, we want you to, it's like that scene in Goodfellas when Robert De Niro's trying to direct Karen down the alleyway to get some new coats. It's like, no, just go down the corner, down there.
Right in there. Right. Well, let me tell you, I see a guy lurking in the bushes in front of my house. Right now, my house, as befitting a great paranoid, is set up with multiple lines of defense. So it's not like the guy could get close, but I can see him. He can't really see me. And I was like, well, the concierge is supposed to be picking up my car for servicing, so maybe he doesn't look like the kind of cat they sent out to pick up the car, but whatever. So I kind of go out, Turns out he's a lawyer. He tells me his name very quickly, won't give me a business card, says, I have a few questions for you. And he starts talking about financial improprieties, misappropriation of funds, if I had any idea where the $83 million went. And,
Oh man.
and I was like, who are you working for? He said, I can't tell you that. And I said, well, here's the name of my lawyer. I suggest you talk to him. And well, I think we're done here. And he's like, he told me his name right as he was leaving, because I'll tell you this. And he told me his name very quickly. I think he counted on the fact that I wouldn't have remembered his first name. So he told me his last name, and I found him online. And he's a former Justice Department guy who now has gone out on his own, had been at the FBI. It's like, man, it's just been a crazy time. So I've scratched a bit of that for all three of these records, So
So this guy was just outside your house. He didn't. I mean, typically in the limited amount of legal things I've been involved with, they usually contact you in writing about things like
that's
this.
what I thought, man. That's what it was. Really fucking. I wanted to tell the guy, "You're lucky I didn't shoot you," But I didn't need to make with the threats. I mean, I saw him. I could have easily avoided him. I went out to approach him. So yeah, I've never bought a house that had a front door on the street.
Yeah.
That's always made me uneasy. Like you gotta get by a gate and another gate, and then and then even then I can see you before you can see me. So, and the house was purchased purposely because of the defensive capabilities. Yeah.
So Killers Like Us, that title actually could be read a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
And knowing this backstory, I'm interested. Like, what was your actual intention on that?
Well, at one point, I was just talking about, and some of this may have leaked onto the Show Stomper, or maybe it was even Knuckle Up. But I've maintained an association with some people that most people think are really horrible people. And in some cases, they have been really horrible people. But the phrase that comes up, and that my friends at Jiu-Jitsu kind of mockingly at now return to me, is that, hey, he was always nice to me. I mean, Charles Manson was always nice to me, frankly. Things got kind of chippy with the family when we were in business together. But Manson himself was always nice to me. So was Anton LaVey and Kevin Weeks, the Boston Irish Mafia guy who worked with, Jimmy Whitey Bulger. These people were all really nice to me, So I know a bunch of murders and what can I say? I don't know. They were nice to me. So, so that I was like, yeah, killers like us. And then I go, well, why? And then maybe it's a case of seeking that killers like us because killers like us. Right? And somebody actually asked me in an interview. It was great. So, and it was a European publication. This is like last week. The guy said, have you ever killed anybody? Right. Which is a funny question to ask, but not out totally insane. What would be insane if I were to answer it in any other way that I did, which is to say, as far as I know, no. Which if I were on the other side, I would say, well, what does that mean? That's an easy question to say yes or no. What do you mean as far as you know? But he did not ask, and I did not offer. So.
Well, what was his intent on asking this question? You know what I mean? Because it's like that is a fucked up thing to ask someone, and it's like, some of the guys at the gym are vets that I train at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you get to know these people, then you get to talk to them about some of their experiences, and then you realize, and like you're sparring with this guy, and I'm like, this guy's like taking human life before, man. And it's I don't want to talk to him about that, man. That's his own thing, unless he wants to tell me about it.
That's right, and that's where I go. That's where I go with it. If the guy brings it up, my mother, who was like a therapist, told me, she said, somebody brings something up, it means they want to talk about it again. And I had a guy, Max Moore, who was a Navy Corps man who embedded himself several times in the Gulf, and he was, I did a Aussie Confidential on the guy, and he said I had PTSD, and I go, great. He brought it up. We're talking about it because I hear people talk about PTSD all the time. What does it mean? And he said, in my instance, it had nothing to do. I was under fire. I shot back, shot people, killed people. And my PTSD didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with my rotation. I go, what do you mean your rotation? He goes, 1 week out of the month, they rotated me to a hospital in Germany so I could help out there. And then they would rotate me back to the battlefield. I loved the battlefield. Well, there's one guy that he was dealing with in Germany, and the guy had his hands blown off, his genitalia blown off, and his eyes blown out. I mean, he was trying to take apart a bomb, and it went off, right? So, so he had bandages on his eyes, and they had the painkiller that they had to give him was an amnesiac as well. So every day, this guy would wake up screaming. He would go to tear the bandages off his eyes. Couldn't tear the bandages off his eyes because he had no hands, and he had no eyes. And then he would have to calm this guy down and explain to the guy what had happened. And then he would tell the guy, and you have no genitalia. And the guy would be like, wow, man, that kind of sucks. And he was like, yeah. And then the guy would make a joke about it and, be fine about it for the rest of the day. And then he'd go to sleep, and he'd wake up the next day, and the same thing would repeat again. And he goes, that's what gave him PTSD. He goes, but then what got him through it was like, if I could have a fraction of the strength that this guy had, I shouldn't be feeling this bad. But of course he was,
That's probably the most horrific thing I think I've ever heard, actually, is that story.
Yeah, man. I would have figured out some way to, I love living. After my initial fuckfest burst of self-pity, I love living, but I don't know that I would love living. In fact, being sick with this GI thing was the first time I kind of understood, like, man, if my future is a bunch of this forever, I will not,
Right.
So I understood finally for the first time, but that this guy is still alive somewhere and hanging in there, more power to him, man, not me.
Yeah, I've thought about death quite a bit over the last several months, just because, like, I lost someone very, very close to me in the last 6 months. And that idea of, like, I don't particularly fear death myself, or my own death, but I think about other people's suffering and losing them, even losing my cat, like that.
Yeah.
Really, really freaks me out at times, and that's the kind of thing that erodes your sanity away and, like, killed your resolve, I think, at times.
Yeah, it's man. and of course, there's always an assumption in my case, that being a parent, that that you will predecease your kids. And I was like, man, I can't even think about the other portion of that not happening, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's a heavy deal all around, man, all around. So
the cover of Killers Like Us, we have a revolver and some bullets. And you indicated on Show Stomper, your podcast that I listen to on a weekly basis, that you got some backlash as a result of this image.
Yeah, the same guy who asked me if I killed anybody.
Oh, it's the same journalist had a problem with this.
Yeah. He asked about it, and his angle of his angle of attack was it was a little aggressive, it was a little kind of hostile. I mean, he was not digging on it, right? And that was, like, sort of, like, really pretty obvious. And not only that, I just didn't see it coming. Like, the band didn't like it. And I was like, listen, this is the record title. It's lyrically consistent. And I had to explain to them, which I've never had to do. I had to explain to them. And they said, well, can't you make it more like the other covers? And I was like, that's reason enough to not have it be like the other covers, right? And so finally they kind of like, okay. And then the woman taking the photo was, of course, my wife. And then she complained about it. I was like, and I was like, but what do they have in common? Well, they're all from Europe, So I just didn't see it coming. I'm maybe too much of an American in that regard. I didn't see it being an issue, given the title. It was all consistent to me. It all made totally good sense, right?
Yeah, in Europe, they have a different culture around guns over in Europe, and the military too. Actually, the military is in Europe is not regarded the same way as it is in the States. Where in the States, there's this kind of this PR angle surrounding joining the army and being in the military, and in Europe, it's a way different point of view around that. And
Yeah.
also, just guns are not everywhere like they are here.
Well, and also, I mean, I'm not gonna. Nate from Converge, he and I were talking about. He got the record and said he really liked it, but then we were talking about it, and he goes, "Well, it's a pitfall, right? Because on the one hand, you don't want to fall into, you know, you're not an NRA member. Those guys are out of their minds. But at the same time, there's a midway, and I think most of the people I know who are into firearms are in that midway, right? So, I mean, and it's a nuanced thing I mean, I wasn't able to really explain to the journalist outside of saying, "Look, it's the title." But the midway is what I kind of wrote about in the Substack, which is, yeah, I wish that there was no private ownership of guns for all the rest of yous. For me, for me, I'm very quite fine having as many guns as I can get my hands on, because I don't trust you guys, right? So, but yeah, I mean, it's clear we've got a problem, but solutions are in short supply, and until we have a workable one. I mean, the one point that the wife made, which I liked, was that, in 1939, Poland had a lot of guns.
Yeah, well, yeah.
The people in Ukraine there right now have a lot of guns. Didn't stop the tanks, right? So that's where we are with that. But yeah, I wasn't going to take any heat from this guy over.
Because I'm looking at the record cover right now, and I'm like, okay, so what? I mean,
Yep.
I am going to see a band called Cannibal Corpse tonight, who has way
I'm
more
excited.
offensive artwork and lyrics and all this other stuff. So I don't know. I guess people.
Well, I guess the thing is with I mean, Cannibal Corpse. People might imagine that it's like a Marvel Universe movie, right? That
Sure.
is kind of fictional, but that cover is pretty actionable. I mean, I own the item photographed, so I could conceivably take it off that kitchen table and walk out and create a lot of chaos with it. But whatever, I mean, it's a piece of artwork in this instance. It's a still life.
Yeah, I mean, there's that's the real operative right now is art, and we don't have to get into a big discussion about all that stuff, because I'm actually sick of hearing about free speech and artistic freedom and censorship and all that great stuff. But really, at the end of the day, you're creating something to start a conversation with people, and I think that ideology has been lost on the current society that we live in.
Yep. Yeah, and also to me, like I said on the last show, I think that's a monkey show at this point in my mind. I'm really looking. I'm trying to pay attention to the cats behind the curtains, I do another show. One of the guys was like saying, how can you? And I go, no, I'm not getting lost in the weeds. Do you realize? And I actually did the accounting on this in a really strange way. I go, I know 5 billionaires, like 5, like people, and 3 of those billionaires, if you were to get them on the phone or walk up to them right now and say, Eugene says hi, they would go, tell him I said hello.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so the dream I had as a young man, when I grow up, I'm going to be a millionaire. So that you can imagine at this point now, given my location in Silicon Valley, I know dozens of multimillionaires. That is, people who have at ready grasp at least $2 million. So this is kind of a, these people are not playing by the same kind. We can argue about free speech and all that. One of those billionaires was playing poker at I'm not going to divulge too much, but they had a poker game at their house, and at that poker game was Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Carlos Slim. This was not a meeting. This was not Davos. This cats just sitting around in their shorts and t-shirts playing poker. And now I don't know what the stakes were, and I don't know what they talked about, but I guarantee you they weren't talking about free speech and Joe Rogan and any of that shit. That's monkey show stuff. That's for the cheap seats, right? They're talking about destabilizing the Honduras.
Yeah, exactly. It's all bread and circuits. Bread and circus.
Exactly, man. They're laughing at us, man. They're worried about free speech and all that kind of bullshit. The Kardashians. That's for the cheap seats. And I was saying to Oxbow's drummer, I said, yeah, I don't believe. It's like, if you have like at one point Bezos kind of crossed the line to being a trillionaire. And I said, it's probably enough, right? I mean, how much do you need? And Greg just looked at me and goes, are you kidding me? I go, no. He goes, it's never enough. I was like, oh yeah. That's right. That's right. So, I look at all these things as being extended cash grabs. People going, oh, Russia invaded Ukraine. Some guy says, well, why don't you consider this? Why don't you consider black soil, right? Black soil is incredibly profitable, right? I mean, at one point, somebody was lecturing the Chinese about anti-pollution efforts. And the Chinese were not hearing it. They say, you guys had 20 years to get ahead, burning up fossil fuels, and you want to slow us down? And somebody convinced the Chinese, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is your future lies in selling us pollution mediation machinery. And they're like, oh, I mean, how do you think the Middle East became the Middle East? They didn't have to know how to get that oil out of the ground. American banks said, Standard Oil is going to tell you what, we'll do all that stuff for you for free. And all you have to do is put the money in our banks. Cool. Cool. Creation of Saudi Arabia. I mean, I'm not, at a certain point you start to sound kind of nutty, but the point is that our concerns as dictated by CNN business, these are jokes. They're not real. What's real is what those people are discussing when the billionaires are playing poker with each other. That's the real stuff,
Yeah, there is quite a bit of noise, man. And it baffles me that more people don't see that, like surrounding social media and all this other stuff. And, that it's a distraction because right now, we could be entering, World War III, yet people are more concerned about, what Joe Rogan says on his podcast and things like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Right. So, but, at this point, I remember some friends. It's a weird night. It was a triple date, a double blind date, and it's in the hardcore days. And me and these other hardcore cats had met these girls at Mills College, and we're going. And the girls said, "Well, we'll meet you on the corner." This is after the date, so we're going home. So everybody, these other guys were super excited, but I'm more situational awareness guy, and I noticed on Broadway in San Francisco all these police cars driving down the wrong way street. And I go, this doesn't look good. And I see these like Mexican cats like pointing. It's like, there. And I'm calling my friends. I'm like, Jake, John. And they're focused on the girls. They're talking, laughing. And I just stopped walking. Right? It's like, I tried to warn you guys. Something's going on. And the cop cars pulled to a screeching halt right as they turned the corner by Finocchio's in San Francisco, right, on Broadway. And they jump out and start beating the fuck out of them, right? Put them down on the ground here. And the Mexican cats go, you missed one. There's another one. And they're pointing at me.
Oh, man.
And I look at the guys and go like, come on. And then they finally realize, well, okay, they can let one go. And so, I mean, what had happened, is that one guy had broken into a police paddy wagon that night and stole a couple of mag lights and had the police hats because he thought it was a big joke. And that's what they got him for. He also had a bunch of crystal meth on him, so he was fucked. One of the guys, the guy who set up the date, was actually an Intel engineer, so he got out that night. And me, well, I didn't go to jail at all because I was just a passive participant. But, being able to see trouble a little bit before it hits, staying ahead of disaster, has been my special magical skill, you know.
So the Bunuel record is out now.
It's out.
Yeah, and
February 18th it happened. Yep.
yeah. I got a copy from Bandcamp there, so I have the digital and the physicals on the way. So yeah,
I won't listen to physical gets here, so I'm in the dark about what it, because I typically, my thing is I'll sing and then I don't want to hear the record till it's done. You know, like you know, with Oxbow right now, we're doing the choir stuff this weekend, and so I'll participate and listen there. But once they start, like I don't want to. I'll listen to it. If you need me to listen to a mix, I'll listen to a mix. But really, I want to be in the dark until we have something that was mastered, and then I'll listen to it. And in the case of Bunuel, I won't listen to it until I have the hard copy in my hand. I want to have clean ears. So.
It's definitely easy to get lost in the weeds on this stuff, man, when you're making records. That's for sure. You know.
Well, guys, also I'm looking forward to, right? Like for the next record, and I want to be able to understand clearly what happened without thinking, oh, we did this guitar overdub. I don't want to, nah. I need to skate by all that and listen to it in its totality. So I'm waiting for Profound Lore Cats for Chris to get me a physical copy, which should be here this week for me.
Well, I was just going to lead up to that. Is that it's out on Profound Lore, which a lot of you guys that are listening are probably aware of, since they put out a lot of death and black metal and extreme music and stuff. So you can find this in the Profound Lore catalog. So
which was weird. I mean, we approached Chris about it, and I mean, it was an interesting thing because it was initially going to be the Oxbow record, and then Epicat came in and said, actually, we want the Oxbow record, and we're like, yeah, well, you know, we're kind of men of our word. We don't want to fuck over Chris. But then we talked to Chris about it. He goes, no, that's a better place for Oxbow. Do you have anything else? And I was like, yeah, listen to Bunuel. He goes, this could be just what I ordered. I'm trying to get expand into kind of like how Relapse has got Relapse, and then whatever the other one is called, the one that's a little bit more experimental. And that's what he was trying. He goes, this could fit the bill. And I was like, yeah, man, listen to these other two records. And he was totally in. So I'm glad it's him, because I like the label. So I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he put out the Photocrime record, which is like a very very different, you know, than a lot of his catalog. It's, you know, it's drum machine sort of dark wave kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, that's cool. And he's a good guy. I like him.
So with those guys in Europe and you living on the West Coast in the States here, did you recorded your stuff in the States, right? Is that how you guys worked it out?
Yeah, I did it with Monty Valier, who is used to play bass in that band Swell. Or if you really want to go back to the old days, played bass in that band Half Church. And, you know, former skateboarder, you know, Sunnyvale guy. But he's got a real good sense. He's like the fifth Beatle, both in terms of really pretty instrumental in helping out a lot of Oxbow stuff, and then really pretty instrumental in crafting, listening to me and, you know, crafting a vocal presence for these records. So every side project I have that, you know, where people are far flung, Monty's taken care of. And indeed, we did 2 more songs after Killers Like Us, and Monty was very specifically asked, a guy at the studio, Ragnar, said, is this a continuation? Is this going to be a part of an expanded? Is it going to be a new? And he goes, it's for the next thing. And so Monty said, okay, we're going to do a different kind of vocal soundscape. So I would like to give Monty full credit, you know.
Well, speaking of vocals, when you have a different vocal approach in this record slightly. I mean, this in Bunuel versus, say, Oxbow, but they're both very unique in my opinion. And I remember back in, I think I've been listening to the Oxbow since maybe '96. Mm-hmm. And my friends in Boston turned me on to you guys, and when I was living up there, and you know, the music, great, exactly the kind of thing I like, you know, like big rock noise, cool, very, very competent playing, you know, very very good playing. And when the vocals came in, I was like, okay, that's a different way of doing things. And I was like, huh, interesting, you know. So what's the story with your vocals, man? Because to put it bluntly, it's just a different take on stuff. How did that develop with you?
Well, and I'm glad you realized it, because see, when I read the reviews, I can tell where people are tapping out to trying to figure it out, or people who are paying attention. And you know, fortunately, most of the reviews, people understand that what I'm doing with Bunuel is very different from what I'm doing with Oxbow,
Yeah.
right? And it may not seem it. Like if you listen to "She's a Find" off a Narcotics Story, that doesn't fit any of the descriptors that people go to when they want to talk about the vocals that I'm doing. But what I did with Bunuel on all three records, and to a certain extent with Oxbow, is like I won't sing a word until I'm in the studio, right? Until I'm standing in front of a microphone. I don't, and people say, "Oh, so you're winging?" I'm not winging it. I can tell I have a counter here on my on my player. It's like I'm like listening to one of these songs like 136 times, right? Like just listening, like putting it on while I'm working, I'm writing, it's in the background on repeat, just that song again and again and again, and then a weird thing will start to happen, man. Like there's a thing called phosphine, I think is what it's called. And phosphine is when you close your eyes and you kind of rub your eyes, and the images that you see on your, on the inside of your eyeballs from your, that's, I think the name of that is phosphine, right? That's what it's vocal stimuli, visual stimuli, where there's no real stimuli. I mean, it's not like I'm watching a cat or a tree. It's just me rubbing my fingers on my eyelids and it leaving an impression. So there's an audio element of that too. And you listen to something 136 times, you'll start to hear the vocal, right?
Sure.
Like you'll start to hear the vocal, and that is a vocal I desire to have come out of me. The one that I'm hearing after I listen to it all those times, and it's tough. It's tough because most singers don't do that because they're not encouraged to do it, right? Like if you're in a band and there's a rehearsal, the rest of the band will look at you and go, "Put your vocals in here. We need to know what the vocals are going to." If your answer is "I don't know," that's not really an acceptable answer for a lot of you. So you end up doing fundamentally scratch vocals, and scratch vocals may or may not be the real vocals. But by the time it comes time to record the song, and I'm basing this on what happened with me and Whipping Boy, you're stuck with it, right? And I don't ever want to create some art that I'm stuck with. I want it to be the art, right? So and if they want to change it once it's recorded, that's fine. Cut it up, do whatever you want, tech thing you want to do with it, that's fine. But I gotta get that first shot, and it's got to be a good one, and that's kind of what I'm doing vocally. And so it's a vocal element. I mean, I can't even think of, Matthew Barney had contacted me.
Wow. Okay.
And it said through his office, and they said, "Hey, can you sing? Like actually sing?" I go, "Yeah, I can actually sing." And they like, "Can you sing like R&B?" I said, "Well, I grew up listening to R&B. I'm guessing I could sing some version of R&B."
Well, they asked you that because you were black. They just figured
Yeah.
it would be, black guy. Can you sing R&B?
Well, it turns out like he was filming something where they needed a character like an R. Kelly type character, right? And the physicality, they figured I could play this person, that would be perfect, but they want to know if I could also pull off the singing portion. I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I can." And they go, "Okay, do it." I was like, "Oh, what do you mean do it?" They go, "Record us something, and then we'll let you know." And so I was like, "Oh shit, okay, well, what's the song I like?" And I picked, "Between the Sheets," by the Isley Brothers, and I said, "Fuck, I'm gonna kill it," and sang it, and then sent it to them, and I never heard from them again. And I have it around here. I've been toying with releasing it in some form or another, just because it cracks me up. But I didn't get the role. He also did not make the movie, so I don't feel bad about that, So yeah, but I mean, vocally, it came from me. What my ears started to hear in those spots. I can't even think. I mean, other bands have asked me to do stuff, and I do it because it lets me use my voice in an interesting way. And so there's some projects where like they actually want me to really sing, and that's kind of a nice change.
If I were to ask you to sing on a track, I don't think I would. I would just say listen to this shit and then just do what you do. And like
Yeah.
that's why you ask someone to collaborate on a record. Like, all right, here's the lyrics. Here's like I recorded a track, for you. It's like of me singing it. I want you to sing it like I'm singing it. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me, really.
It doesn't make, well, some guys actually, and this is why I've gotten more picky about this. Some guys approached me and said, "Hey, we want you to sing." And I go, "Cool." And they said, "I liked the music. I really liked it a lot." And they said, "We kind of envision you being a cross between Phil Anselmo and and Axl Rose." And I laughed, like just like you did. I was like, "Yeah, well, whatever." And so I sang it like me.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's what you came to me. Never heard from those guys again either. But I sang a whole fucking record, and I have 8 songs, man. And so after that, I was like, nah, I'm not investing time in other guys' dreams to have them shit can me like that. That was stupid. So now I have to create some kind of like, and also too, I've said, if there's not going to be a video, I don't want to do it. And I just say that because generationally speaking, us old guys in bands, we're not, my kids, my kids have never like said to me, "Hey Dad, I want you to listen to this song." They always say to me, "I want to show you this song."
Oh yeah, no, that's the real thing, man, for sure.
And I guarantee you, any Oxbow video online has had more views online than we've ever sold records. So, I'm looking to make if you're not doing a video, don't even ask me. I'm glad to do a video for you. So, yeah, I know. Well, actually, there's a guy in a UK band who I like, who was in that band 1617. A longtime friend, Damian Bennett, and he said, yeah. I said, "Is there a video?" He said, yeah. And I go, no, man, no, yeah. If there's, honest to God, if there's no video, I'm gonna kill you. I'm not doing more stuff without videos. I'm not. And he goes, okay, we'll work on this. I go, okay, great, cool.
Yeah, I learned about that a while ago. Like, you know a lot from Dialect. He used to be in Dialect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got a studio up in Harlem, and 100% of the people he works with, these kids from like uptown up there, and I come down to his spot and we hang out and whatever, and he was telling me, he's like it's all about videos and YouTube. No one buys, these kids don't buy records. They just put stuff on their phone, and that's what it's all about. And it's like,
yep.
It's like, I've been trying to apply that too to what we do. We have some material coming out later this spring. Yep. And we all have little videos, even if it's like just a visualizer or something like that.
And it doesn't even have to be based on what they're used to seeing. It doesn't even have to be expensive shit, man. It's got to have a visual component. And there's something else that, as an old guy, I've had to shake my head. I mean, and Nico sort of helped with this with Oxbow. It's like, I'm sure you do it the same way. We're thinking about albums. We're thinking about records, right? In other words, I'm thinking about a discrete. To me, a musical unit is a fucking record, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and end. 8 to 12 songs. That's the record, and that's old guy shit, right? Because nobody. That's not how people are people are singles. It's a singles universe because everybody's got the shuffle and they got the Spotify and the Apple Music, and it plays one song and then you bounces to another. And then, look, my kids, when they say they want to show me a song, they'll show me, how often it is that I'll actually get to the end of the song that they want to show me. Never. They never let me get to the end of it, right? They'll show me about 30 seconds of it, and then they're like, well, so you get the idea, or they'll move on to something else. And why is that? I think, well, Apple started giving you 30-second segments. Pretty much everybody's like dialed in. I got it. I got where the song is going. I got to move on. Short attention span theater. So, yeah, Oxbow, this Love's Holiday, we did 19 songs. And in my mind, I wrote a record, but Nico was like, no. While we got Joe, while we got the studio time, let's just keep going. And I mean, fundamentally, he's right. People will listen to discrete songs, right? Then it's only old people like us that are going to sit down and say, I want to listen to that record, and we'll listen to it from beginning to end, which is still how I listen to music that my friends make. They say,
Yeah.
that's how I listen to it, right? So
Yeah, I'm the same way in that respect. I like to enjoy, I'll put on, Tales of Topographical Oceans or something. No.
yep.
I mean, I'm half kidding about that. I just wanted to like roll out like one of the most dinosaur records you can imagine at this point. But yeah, I like to. I'll enjoy like an entire thing, but I do with the understanding that not everyone is like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it does, and so each song, it has to stand on its own, which is something that you can't say, well, this is a transitional song. That doesn't work. Each song stands on its own, but then also it also has to be representative of the whole, because what you're wanting people to do is pull a trigger on buying the next song and the next song until they've purchased all 12 or 8 or whatever you've got, right?
So there's a new Oxbow record that's in the works, right? You were saying?
Yeah. This is called Love's Holiday, and so Bunuel is 2022 with Killers Like Us, and Oxbow is 2023 with Love's Holiday. So
I just want to pivot real quick over to the podcast that you do, the Show Stomper, and some people that listen to this are into MMA and combat sports and things like that, and that show is barely an MMA show.
yeah.
Which is a good thing, because I don't really listen to it. I only listen to one other podcast I used to listen to all these like martial arts podcasts, fighting and all that. I listened to Show Stomper and I listened to Morning Combat, the Luke Thomas. And in some ways there are similarities between your two shows, because your both shows are speaking very much about like culture and like personal stuff and all that, and that's what I enjoy the most. It's almost like I actually don't even I don't watch every fight anymore, man. I used to watch every event.
Oh, you can't. It's we talk about that. You just can't, for many reasons you can't. But yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, I agree with you about. I have been experiencing a lot of disillusionment in general with just with MMA in general, and I find myself watching the one Muay Thai fights more than anything else. Just because at the gym we're playing those all the time, and at home I'm watching fights that happen at like 7 o'clock in the morning. But I'll watch them later on in the day and that kind of thing. Yeah. But that's it's like a commentary on just culture and, philosophy. And you talk about like, literature and all this other stuff. And I really appreciate the show.
Well, this last week, the thing we did, the meditation on mercy, where, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's something that I think about a lot, these fuzzy words that, like at one point, a friend of mine said to me, well, you have to, it's a guy's religion. You have to respect it. And I go, why? Why must I do anything? I mean, seriously, okay, brush your teeth. Why? Well, if you don't, your teeth will rot out of your head, and you'll have, early life, your biome will be destroyed. Okay. Those are reasons. Those are real reasons. What are the reasons that I have to respect the guy's religion? Well, if you don't, it'll be like disrespectful. Like, what are you talking about? I don't respect Parcheesi. I like Parcheesi, but I don't respect it. It's a game. It's it's got no reality to it. So he ended up just kind of shrugging and say, well, you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. I go, yeah, that's why we have them, so they can get hurt. Right? Yeah, you've got to get beyond some of this stuff. So the meditation on mercy was really compelling, especially as I just watched a movie where they were saying, you judge a man's power by how merciful he is. I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe. I mean, I'm going to have to go with the bad brains on that, which was, and in the end, you just may see that what you receive is what you gave to me. And this is very specifically about the Substack I just written, where I said, I'm not going to write about Ozzy again until their indictments. I'll give them a little space. But, their grift is so audacious that what happened last week just begged to be addressed. And I was like, I had this battle in myself. Maybe I should just let him go. And I was like, nah. Mercy is for suckers. You know? you got to get what's coming to you here.
I sometimes think about all these little rules and musings that everyone has, and you know, and I fall prey to all these abstractions too. But then there are times, like usually at like 3 o'clock in the morning, when I wake up in the middle of the night, and I think about how we shouldn't even fucking exist, man. You know, we're floating in this endless black void of nothingness, and we have this tiny speck of reality that we're living in, and it's like all this shit's made up, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, we just say some shit to make it through the day, but reality, I mean, there's a great thing that Evander Holyfield said to me, which I like, and he said, you know, when you're poor, I mean, he tied it into, you know, classism in a weird way. He said, when you're poor, you know, you could walk around, you could take a poop in the ground, nobody cares. You know, you could dig a hole, take a poop in the ground, and nobody cares. And I was like, yeah, that's all of this. All of this is like a weird fantasy, you know. It's we're hurtling on this rock through the deep space, and man, I don't know. I mean, I have this thing called QTAT that I got from Al Goldstein at Screw Magazine when we interviewed him at one point, and it was like, quick time across town. As long as it doesn't keep me from making quick time across town, God love you. Believe whatever you want. You know, but if it keeps me from making quick time across town, then I gotta like say, man, you suck. So anyway.
Well, thanks for your time, Eugene. Once again, it's always great catching up with you, man. And you know, before we sign off, can you just you know, let everyone know where they can check out, you know, the Substack, the podcast, news about Bunuel and Oxbow and all this other stuff?
All right, the Substack, that's important. So that's
very important. Yeah,
it's called Look What You Made Me Do, but you can find it at EugeneSRobinson.substack.com. That's SUBSTACK.com. Bunuel is on Facebook as well as Bandcamp, but you can just get it most easily through Profound Lore. Or a lot of this stuff I just tweet out on the regular. So if the Twitter machine is part of your reality, it's at Eugene S. Robinson on Twitter. Mr. Sleep, the number 3 for Instagram, and Oxbow, same Facebook, can reliably be found there. So that's how to follow, check out shit. So
awesome. Thanks a lot, and thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.
Student, like a padded room. My clothes are bundled on the floor. Cops, standing in front of the door. Cops are standing under the door. They threw gear at me. Long green, broken zipper in front.